The scent of pine and damp earth filled my lungs as I was dragged through the forest, my bare feet catching on roots and stones. Autumn had painted the trees in fiery colors, but the beauty was lost on me as rough hands pushed me forward. The night air carried whispers of the pack members trailing behind us, excited murmurs about the human offering being delivered to the Blackstone territory. I wasn't human, though. Not entirely. My blonde hair hung in tangled waves around my face, partially obscuring my view as I stumbled forward. The silver chain around my wrists burned against my skin. Silver. The one thing that could weaken a werewolf, even a half-breed like me. In my old pack, the Silver Creek, I had always been considered defective. Too weak to shift properly, too human to be useful, too wolf to be accepted among normal people. "Keep moving," growled Vincent, my former alpha's son and the leader of this delivery party. His voice dripped with disgust as his fingers dug into my shoulder. "You should be grateful, Alara. Most unwanted females are simply exiled. At least this way you'll serve a purpose." Purpose. The word echoed hollowly in my chest. My purpose was to be a peace offering, a gesture of goodwill between the Silver Creek pack and the notoriously brutal Blackstone pack. There had been tensions over territory for generations, and apparently, my worthless life was the price of temporary harmony. My mother's voice whispered in my memories. "When the world shows you its teeth, show it your soul instead." She had given me the small wooden wolf pendant that now hung around my neck. Its familiar weight, the only comfort in this nightmare. Before she died, she had told me that true strength wasn't in claws or fangs, but in the heart that refuses to break. I touched the pendant now, drawing what courage I could from it. We approached a massive clearing where towering stone walls emerged from the forest like the spine of some ancient beast. Torches illuminated the perimeter, casting dancing shadows across the entrance to the Blackstone territory. Even from this distance, I could sense the power emanating from within. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of werewolves, their collective energy making the air itself feel heavier. Vincent yanked me to a stop at the territory's edge. "Remember your place," he hissed. "You're nothing to them. Nothing to anyone. If you're lucky, they'll just use you for kitchen work or cleaning. If not," his smile turned cruel, "well, I've heard the Blackstone Alpha has quite an appetite." Something in his tone made my skin crawl, but I refused to show fear. Instead, I lifted my chin and met his gaze directly. A small defiance that earned me a sharp slap across the face. "Still acting like you have pride," he sneered. "That's always been your problem, Alara. You never learned where you belong." The gates swung open with a groan of ancient metal, and several hulking figures emerged from the shadows. Even with my diluted werewolf senses, their power was overwhelming. Pure-blooded alphas and high-ranking betas, their eyes gleaming with preternatural light in the darkness. "Is this it?" One of them stepped forward, his massive frame blotting out the torchlight behind him. "This is your offering?" Vincent straightened, suddenly deferential. "She's stronger than she looks, half-breed but well-trained in service. She'll be useful." The way his voice lingered on useful made my stomach turn. I kept my eyes downcast, not out of submission but to hide the rage building inside me. I had spent 23 years being treated as less than, and now I was being handed off like a peace token, with thinly veiled suggestions about what services I might provide. "The Alpha King will decide her worth." The Blackstone wolf gestured, and 2 guards moved to flank me. "Silver Creek's debt is acknowledged. You may go." Just like that, I was transferred. Property changing hands. Vincent didn't even look back as he and his companions retreated into the darkness of the forest. Whatever happened to me now was no longer his concern. The Blackstone wolves led me through the gates and into a courtyard lit by more torches. Unlike the ramshackle cabins of Silver Creek, the Blackstone compound was a fortress. Stone buildings nestled against sheer cliff faces, with what appeared to be cave entrances leading deeper into the mountain. Warriors patrolled the walls, their movements fluid and predatory. "This way," grunted one of my escorts, leading me toward the largest building at the center of the compound. Curious eyes followed our progress, some pitying, others calculating. I caught snippets of whispered conversations. "Half-breed. Can't even shift properly. Wonder what the king wants with her." I fixed my gaze straight ahead, clutching my mother's pendant. Whatever awaited me, I would face it standing, not cowering. The central building opened into a great hall, filled with the scent of wood smoke and pine. Massive timber beams supported a vaulted ceiling, and a circular fire pit dominated the center, its flames casting the room in amber light and dancing shadows. Around the walls hung the pelts of prey animals, and what I recognized with a chill as the ceremonial skins of challenger wolves who had failed to defeat the pack's leadership. At the far end, upon a dais of rough-hewn stone, stood an empty throne crafted from the antlers of countless deer and elk. The entire space radiated power and ancient tradition. "Wait here." One of the guards shoved me toward the fire pit. "Don't try to run. There's nowhere to go." As if I had anywhere to go. My old pack had discarded me, and the human world had never been an option, not for someone like me, caught between two realms and belonging to neither. I stood alone by the fire, its warmth doing little to dispel the chill of dread in my bones. Minutes passed, stretching into what felt like hours. My legs ached, but I refused to sit, refused to appear any weaker than they already thought I was. The great doors at the far end of the hall suddenly swung open, and a hush fell over the room. Even the fire seemed to dim in response to the presence that entered. He moved like shadow given form. Fluid, powerful strides that covered ground with predatory grace. Tall, impossibly broad-shouldered, with skin tanned from the sun, and marked with the scars of countless battles. His hair was dark as midnight, swept back from a face that could have been carved from granite, all sharp angles and unyielding lines. But it was his eyes that froze the breath in my lungs. Amber, almost golden in the firelight, with vertical pupils that marked him as something more than a normal werewolf. The Alpha King of the Blackstone Pack. Conversations died as he passed, wolves bowing their heads in instinctive submission. He acknowledged none of them, those burning eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my heart hammer against my ribs. Every step he took toward me seemed to compress the air in the room. He stopped several feet away, his nostrils flaring slightly as he scented the air. Something passed across his face. A flicker of confusion? Disbelief? It vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. "So," he said, his voice a low, rough rumble that seemed to vibrate through my very bones. "This is Silver Creek's idea of a peace offering." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Apparently so. My response seemed to surprise him. One dark eyebrow arching slightly. Most wolves would never dare speak to an Alpha King without permission, let alone with anything resembling defiance. He circled me slowly, examining me from every angle. I could feel his gaze like a physical touch, assessing, calculating. I kept my eyes forward, my spine straight, despite the exhaustion and fear threatening to buckle my knees. "Your name?" he demanded, coming to stand before me once more. "Ilara." "Ilara," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it on his tongue. "And you understand why you're here?" "I'm a peace offering," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "A token to maintain the truce between Silver Creek and Blackstone." His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Is that what they told you?" Before I could respond, he reached out with startling speed, his fingers capturing my chin. I flinched but held my ground as he tilted my face up, forcing me to meet his gaze directly. This close, I could see flecks of gold and emerald in those amber eyes, could feel the supernatural heat radiating from his skin. "Half-breed," he murmured, more to himself than to me, "but there's something else. Something." Whatever he saw in my face made him frown. He released me abruptly and turned to the guards. "Take her to the eastern quarters, the empty room at the end of the hall. Post guards at the door and windows." The guards exchanged glances, clearly surprised. The eastern quarters, I would later learn, were reserved for high-ranking pack members, not for offerings or servants. "But my king," one began hesitantly. "That wing is for—" Did I stutter? The Alpha King's voice dropped to a dangerous growl, and the guard immediately bowed his head. "No, my king." At once. As the guards moved to escort me away, the Alpha King's voice stopped them once more. "And remove those silver chains. Now." One of the guards quickly produced a key and unlocked the silver manacles. As they fell away, I couldn't suppress a small gasp of relief. The skin beneath was red and blistered. the constant burning pain suddenly replaced with cool air. The Alpha King's eyes narrowed at the sight of my injuries. For a moment, something like rage flashed across his face, quickly controlled. "See that her wounds are treated," he ordered, "and bring her food, proper food from the main kitchen, not scraps." With that, he turned and strode from the hall, leaving a wake of whispers and speculative glances. I stood rooted to the spot, confusion replacing fear as the guards led me away. Why would the fearsome Alpha King of the Blackstone Pack concern himself with my comfort? Why place me in quarters meant for his inner circle? As we left the great hall, I felt a strange sensation between my shoulder blades, like someone watching me intently. When I glanced back, I caught the Alpha King standing in the shadows by a side entrance, those predatory eyes still fixed on me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Our gazes locked for just a moment, and something electric passed between us, a recognition I didn't understand, a connection I couldn't explain. Then he was gone, melting into the darkness as if he had never been there at all. That night, as I lay in a bed far more comfortable than anything I had known in Silver Creek, I clutched my mother's pendant and wondered what fate awaited me in this strange new pack. I had been sold as a peace offering, expecting servitude or worse. Instead, I had been placed in a position of apparent privilege, by direct order of the most feared alpha in the region. And though I couldn't explain why, I knew with bone-deep certainty that my life had changed irrevocably the moment those golden eyes had met mine. Something told me that the Alpha King had recognized something in me that even I didn't understand. And that knowledge was as terrifying as it was thrilling. Dawn broke through the narrow window of my room, casting golden light across unfamiliar stone walls. For a moment, I lay still, disoriented by the soft bed and warm blankets, luxuries I'd never been afforded in Silver Creek. Then reality rushed back. I was in the Blackstone territory, an offering, property transferred from one pack to another, yet nothing about my treatment aligned with what I'd expected. The room I'd been given was small but well-appointed, with a real bed instead of the pallet I was accustomed to. Someone had left clean clothes at the foot of the bed, simple but well-made garments of soft wool and linen, not the threadbare hand-me-downs I'd worn my entire life. My wrists still bore the red marks from the silver chains, though the burning had subsided to a dull ache. As promised, a healer had visited me the night before, applying a soothing salve that smelled of herbs and forest. She had worked in silence, her eyes occasionally flicking to my face with undisguised curiosity. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. A young woman entered carrying a tray of food, not scraps or leftovers, but fresh bread, fruit, and what smelled like actual meat. My stomach growled embarrassingly loud. "The Alpha King requests your presence in the council chamber once you've eaten and dressed," she said, placing the tray on a small table by the window. Her gaze lingered on my face, as if searching for something. "I'm Mira. I've been assigned to assist you." "Assigned to assist me or to watch me?" I asked, reaching for a piece of bread. It was still warm from the oven, the crust crackling beneath my fingers. A smile flickered across her face. "Both, if I'm being honest. You've caused quite a stir." "I don't understand why," I admitted between bites. "I'm nothing special." Mira tilted her head, her expression curious. "The Alpha King doesn't personally intervene for nothing special. He doesn't place offerings in the eastern quarters. And he certainly doesn't—" She trailed off, catching herself. "Doesn't what?" I pressed. "It's not my place," she said, moving toward a small chest against the wall. She opened it to reveal a basin of water and some soap. "You should wash and dress. It's unwise to keep him waiting." As I prepared myself, questions tumbled through my mind. Why had the Alpha King singled me out? What did he want from me? The stories I'd heard about him were terrifying. That he had killed dozens of challenging wolves with his bare hands. That he could shift faster than any werewolf alive. That he ruled the Blackstone Pack with absolute authority and brutal efficiency. The clothes fit surprisingly well. Leggings, a simple tunic, and soft leather boots. As I fastened my mother's pendant around my neck, Mira's eyes followed the movement. "That's beautiful," she commented. "Old magic from the look of it." I clutched the carved wooden wolf protectively. It was my mother's. Was she from Silver Creek too? No. The word came out sharper than I intended. My mother's origins were something I rarely discussed. partly because I knew so little myself. She had died when I was 12, taking many of her secrets to the grave. All I knew was that she wasn't from Silver Creek originally. She had arrived pregnant and alone, and the pack had taken her in out of reluctant obligation to a fellow wolf, even one carrying a half-human child. Mira seemed to sense my reluctance and didn't press further. "Come," she said, gesturing toward the door. "I'll show you to the council chamber." We walked through stone corridors that opened occasionally to reveal glimpses of the compound. In daylight, I could see that the Blackstone territory was even more impressive than it had appeared the night before. The main buildings were nestled against a mountainside, with the forest spreading out below. Unlike Silver Creek's scattered, haphazard layout, everything here spoke of planning and purpose. Watchtowers positioned at strategic points, training grounds where warriors practiced combat forms, gardens where herbs and vegetables grew in neat rows, and everywhere, the sense of hierarchy was palpable. Wolves of different ranks moved with clear awareness of their position. When higher-ranking members passed, others lowered their gazes or tilted their heads in subtle acknowledgement. The council chamber was located in the same building as the Great Hall, though we entered through a different door. 2 guards stood at attention outside, their expressions sharpening as we approached. "The Alpha King's guest," Mira announced, and I noted the careful choice of words. Not prisoner or offering, but guest. A distinction that clearly surprised the guards as much as it did me. They stepped aside, and Mira gave me an encouraging nod. "Good luck," she whispered. And then I was alone, pushing open a heavy wooden door and stepping into the unknown. The council chamber was smaller than the Great Hall, but no less imposing. A massive table of polished wood dominated the center, carved with symbols I didn't recognize. Maps and charts covered one wall, while weapons, ceremonial and practical, adorned another. A fire burned in a stone hearth, keeping the mountain chill at bay. The Alpha King stood with his back to me, studying one of the maps. He wore no crown, no obvious symbols of his station, yet his authority was unmistakable in the set of his shoulders, the stillness with which he held himself, the stillness of an apex predator who never needed to rush. "You slept well?" he asked without turning, and I realized he had scented me the moment I entered. "Better than expected for someone who was sold like livestock," I replied, unable to keep the edge from my voice. He turned then, those unsettling eyes fixing on me. In daylight, they were even more striking. Amber with those unusual vertical pupils that marked him as something more than an ordinary alpha. His face remained impassive, but something like amusement flickered in his gaze. "Direct," he observed. "Unusual for someone in your position." "What exactly is my position?" I countered, "because I'm finding it difficult to understand." He gestured to a chair. "Sit." It wasn't a request. I sat, and he took the seat across from me, studying me with that same intense focus he had shown the night before. "Your former alpha told my emissary that you were a half-breed," he began, "incapable of a full shift, with diluted senses and strength. Is that accurate?" The blunt assessment stung, even though I'd heard worse my entire life. "Yes." "Yet you carry wolf blood. My mother was a full werewolf. My father was human. And where is your father now?" I shrugged. "I never knew him. He was gone before I was born." The Alpha King leaned forward slightly. "And your mother?" "Dead, 11 years ago." I touched my pendant instinctively, and his eyes tracked the movement. "That pendant," he said. "Where did it come from?" "My mother gave it to me. It's all I have left of her." He held out his hand. "May I?" Everything in me resisted the idea of surrendering my most precious possession, but refusing an Alpha King's request wasn't wise. Reluctantly, I removed the pendant and placed it in his palm. He examined it carefully, turning it over in his fingers. The carved wolf seemed to catch the light oddly, almost glowing in his grasp. His expression changed subtly, a tightening around the eyes, a slight furrow between his brows. "This is very old," he said finally, returning it to me. "And very rare. Do you know what it represents?" I closed my fingers around the familiar wood. "My mother said it was a protection charm. That it would keep me safe when she couldn't." "It's more than that." He rose and moved to a bookshelf in the corner, Selecting a leather-bound volume and bringing it back to the table, he opened it to reveal pages of ancient text and illustrations. This symbol, he pointed to a drawing that looked remarkably like my pendant, represents the first pack, the original werewolves, before the bloodlines split. I frowned, trying to process this information. What does that have to do with me? Instead of answering directly, he asked, "What do you know about your mother's history, before Silver Creek?" Very little. She didn't like to talk about it. I hesitated, then added, "She once told me she came from people of the old ways, but I never knew what that meant." Something shifted in his expression. A confirmation of some private theory. The old ways. He repeated softly, "Yes, that would explain much." "Explain what?" Frustration crept into my voice. "Why am I here? What do you want from me?" He closed the book. His decision apparently made. Walk with me. Again, not a request. I followed him from the council chamber, acutely aware of the stares that followed us as we moved through the compound. The Alpha King walked slightly ahead, his stride purposeful. Wolves scrambled to clear a path, bowing their heads as he passed. None would meet my gaze directly, though I could feel their curiosity like a physical weight. We climbed a narrow path that wound up the mountainside, eventually reaching a plateau overlooking the entire territory. From this height, I could see the natural defenses that made the Blackstone Pack so formidable. Sheer cliffs to one side, dense forest to the other, with the compound nestled in the valley between. "Silver Creek sold you because they didn't understand what you are," the Alpha King said, breaking the silence. "They saw only weakness where they should have seen potential." Potential for what? I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the morning sun. He turned to face me, the wind ruffling his dark hair. "When was the last time you tried to shift?" The question caught me off guard. Years ago. I gave up trying after. The memory rose unbidden. 14 years old, desperately attempting to shift during a pack ceremony, managing only a partial transformation that left me twisted and in agony, while the others laughed and turned away in disgust. "After they mocked your failure," he finished for me, and there was something dangerous in his tone. Not directed at me, but at those who had ridiculed me. "It's not just mockery when it's true," I said quietly. "I can't shift fully. I never could. Because you were trying to become the wrong wolf." I stared at him, uncomprehending. What does that mean? Instead of explaining, he stepped closer, into my personal space. I resisted the urge to back away, holding my ground, even as his scent enveloped me, pine and smoke and something wilder, more primal. "Close your eyes," he commanded. Every instinct warned against making myself vulnerable, but curiosity won out. I closed my eyes. "Now, feel the mountain beneath your feet," his voice came, low and mesmerizing. "Feel the air on your skin, the sun on your face. Listen to the forest below, the birds in the trees, the heartbeats of prey animals hiding in the undergrowth." To my surprise, I could sense what he described, faintly at first, then with growing clarity, the chittering of squirrels in a distant oak, the soft padding of a deer's hooves on forest moss, the whisper of wind through pine needles. "Your senses aren't weak, Ilara. They're different, tuned to aspects of the world that most wolves overlook." His hand touched my pendant, his fingers brushing against my collarbone. Heat bloomed from the contact point, spreading through my chest. "The first pack," he continued, "wasn't just stronger than modern werewolves. They were different, more connected to the natural world, to old magics. Some bloodlines carried abilities beyond physical strength, healing, sensing, dreaming." My eyes flew open. Dreaming? Something in my reaction seemed to confirm his suspicions. "You have dreams, don't you? Dreams that come true." The breath caught in my throat. I had never told anyone about the dreams. Vivid visions that sometimes manifested in reality days or weeks later. My mother had warned me never to speak of them, that others wouldn't understand. "How did you know?" I whispered. His expression softened fractionally. "Because I recognized what you are the moment I scented you. Silver Creek saw a half-breed, too weak to be a proper wolf. But I see a dreamwalker, the first to be born in 3 generations. The word resonated within me, awakening some dormant recognition. Dreamwalker. My mother had used that term once, when I was very young, before she began hiding our differences from the pack. What does this mean? I asked, struggling to process everything he was telling me. It means, he said, his gaze intense, that you weren't sent here as an offering. You were sent here because fate demanded it. Before I could question him further, a howl rose from the compound below. Urgent. A summons. The Alpha King's expression hardened instantly. We're needed below, he said, already moving toward the path with that same fluid grace. Stay close to me. We descended rapidly, the atmosphere in the compound noticeably tenser than when we had left. Warriors moved with purpose, some partially shifted with claws extended and eyes glowing. A wolf I hadn't seen before approached us, bowing quickly to the Alpha King. My king, they've arrived at the border, a delegation from Silver Creek, demanding the return of their property. His eyes flicked to me with poorly concealed disdain. The Alpha King's face became a mask of cold fury. Property, he repeated, the word a soft growl. Interesting choice. They claim the offering was temporary, the messenger continued. A gesture of goodwill, not a permanent transfer. Do they indeed? The Alpha King's voice was dangerously calm. And who leads this delegation? Vincent, son of Alpha Thorn. My stomach clenched at the name. Vincent, who had delivered me to Blackstone with thinly veiled suggestions about my usefulness. Vincent, who had taken every opportunity to remind me of my place at the bottom of Silver Creek's hierarchy. Tell them I will meet with them, the Alpha King decided. In the clearing at the territory boundary, no more than 5 representatives from their side. As the messenger hurried away, the Alpha King turned to me. You will accompany me. Panic flared in my chest. Why? If they're here to take me back, they won't take you anywhere, he interrupted, and the absolute certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it raised new questions. Why was he so determined to keep me here? What value did a supposed dreamwalker have to the Blackstone pack? Trust me, he added more softly, seeing my hesitation. And strangely, despite everything, some part of me did trust him, or at least trusted him more than I trusted Vincent and the Silver Creek pack who had discarded me so easily. An hour later, I stood beside the Alpha King in a forest clearing, flanked by his most formidable warriors. Across from us, Vincent and 4 other Silver Creek wolves waited, tension vibrating in the air between our groups. This is unexpected, the Alpha King said, his tone deceptively casual. I wasn't aware that peace offerings came with return policies. Vincent's eyes narrowed. We've reconsidered the arrangement. The female has sentimental value to certain members of our pack. The lie was so transparent I almost laughed. No one in Silver Creek had ever valued me, sentimentally or otherwise. Whatever game Vincent was playing, it had nothing to do with concern for my welfare. Sentimental value, the Alpha King repeated, as if testing the concept. Strange, then, that she was delivered in silver chains, with burns that still haven't fully healed. His hand moved to the small of my back, a gesture that was both protective and possessive. Strange that your emissary described her as well-trained for service, with suggestions about how she might be useful. Vincent's gaze darted between us, calculation replacing his initial confidence. There seems to be a misunderstanding. Alara is a valued member of Silver Creek. We merely thought to share her unique perspectives with our allies temporarily. Unique perspectives, the Alpha King echoed. His voice remained level, but I could feel the rage building beneath his calm exterior. Tell me, Vincent of Silver Creek, did you know what she is? Confusion flickered across Vincent's face. She's a half-breed, weak, barely able to shift. The Alpha King's smile was cold as winter. And that is why she will remain with Blackstone. Your ignorance forfeited any claim you might have had. Vincent took a step forward, then checked himself as the Blackstone warriors tensed. She belongs to Silver Creek, he insisted, his voice rising. By pack law. By pack law, the Alpha King cut in. She belongs to herself, and by the older laws, the ones your pack has conveniently forgotten, she falls under my protection now. Vincent's face flushed with anger. You can't just... I already have. The The Alpha King's voice dropped to that dangerous register that made the hairs on my neck stand up. Return to your Alpha with this message. Silver Creek's disrespect has been noted. The truce holds, for now, but if any of your wolves set foot on my territory again without invitation, I will consider it an act of war. The threat hung in the air, absolute and unambiguous. Vincent's jaw worked as he struggled to find a response, pride warring with self-preservation. Finally, he spat on the ground between us. "This isn't over," he snarled, before turning away. His companions followed, disappearing into the forest with backward glances full of malice. Only when they were gone did the Alpha King's posture relax slightly. He turned to me, those extraordinary eyes searching my face. "Are you all right?" he asked, and the gentleness in his voice surprised me. "Why did you do that?" I countered, overwhelmed by the confrontation and its implications. Why risk conflict with Silver Creek over someone like me? For a long moment, he simply looked at me, as if deciding how much to reveal. Then he reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of blonde hair from my face with unexpected tenderness. "Because, Ilara Dreamwalker," he said softly, "you are not just someone. You are everything." The walk back to the Blackstone compound passed in silence, my mind spinning with the Alpha King's words. You are everything. What could that possibly mean? I had spent my entire life being nothing, a half-breed failure, tolerated at best, reviled at worst. Now this powerful Alpha was treating me as if I held some crucial importance, calling me by a title I barely understood, Dreamwalker. 3 days passed, each bringing new surprises. I was given freedom to move about certain areas of the compound, though always under the watchful eyes of guards. For my protection, Mira insisted, not to prevent escape. My quarters remained in the eastern wing, where I gradually learned the other residents were the Alpha King's most trusted advisors and warriors. I saw little of the Alpha King himself during those days. He was occupied with council meetings and border patrols, apparently dealing with increased tensions following Vincent's visit, but his presence lingered in the details of my treatment, the quality of my meals, the respect I received from pack members who had every reason to resent an outsider in their midst. On the 4th morning, Mira arrived with clothes different from my usual attire. Finer materials, subtle embroidery around the collar and cuffs. "The Alpha King requests your presence for the full moon ceremony tonight," she explained, laying out the garments. "All pack members attend." "I'm not a pack member," I pointed out. Mira's expression was carefully neutral. "The Alpha King specifically named you among those expected to be present. The full moon ceremony." In Silver Creek, such gatherings had been torturous experiences for me, watching others shift effortlessly while I struggled and failed, forced to witness what I could never fully become. The memory of that humiliation made my stomach clench. "I can't shift," I reminded her, hating the vulnerability in my voice, not properly. "The king is aware," she said simply, and would explain no further. That evening, I joined the procession moving toward an ancient amphitheater carved into the mountainside. Hundreds of torches illuminated stone seats surrounding a central fire pit, the flames already leaping toward the darkening sky. Pack members arranged themselves according to rank and bloodline, with the strongest closest to the center. Mira led me not to the outer edges where I expected to be placed, but toward the inner circle where the Alpha's closest allies gathered. Whispers followed our passage, curious and sometimes hostile gazes tracking my movements. "Here," Mira indicated a place only 2 rows back from the fire pit. She leaned closer, her voice dropping. "Whatever happens tonight, remember, he has his reasons." Before I could question her cryptic warning, drumming began, a primal rhythm that resonated in the bones and blood. The Alpha King emerged from a cave entrance at the far side of the amphitheater, his powerful frame illuminated by the flames. He wore only simple leather pants, his chest bare, marked with ceremonial paint in patterns I didn't recognize. The drumming intensified as he approached the fire, and the crowd fell into absolute silence. When he spoke, his voice carried effortlessly to every corner of the gathering. "Tonight, we honor the moon that calls to our blood," he began, the traditional opening I recognized from Silver Creek's ceremonies. "Tonight, we celebrate the gift of the shift, the strength of the pack, the legacy of our ancestors. So far, familiar, but then he deviated from the ritual I knew. Tonight, he continued, his gaze sweeping the assembly before landing directly on me. We also acknowledge older truths. That strength comes in many forms. That the first pack contained more than fangs and claws. It held wisdom, vision, healing, and sight. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Confusion mixed with anticipation. This was clearly not the usual ceremony. For too long, we have valued only physical power, the Alpha King declared. We have forgotten the gifts that once made our kind more than mere beasts. Tonight, the moon calls us to remember. He gestured, and to my horror, 2 warriors approached where I sat. Ilara, the Alpha King called. Join me. Every instinct screamed for me to refuse, to hide, to run, anything but stand before the entire pack and expose my inadequacy. But Mira's gentle push propelled me forward, and somehow I found myself walking on unsteady legs toward the fire pit. The Alpha King extended his hand, and with nowhere else to go, I took it. His palm was warm against mine, anchoring me as the curious stares of hundreds of werewolves bore into my back. Many of you have heard that Silver Creek sent us a half-breed unable to shift. He addressed the crowd, still holding my hand. What they did not know, what they were too blind to see, was that they harbored among them a dream walker. The word rippled through the assembly like a stone dropped in still water, creating widening circles of shock and disbelief. Some of the older wolves leaned forward, their expressions suddenly intent. For those who have forgotten the old stories, the Alpha King continued, dreamwalkers walk between worlds, the physical and the spiritual, the present and what might be. They carry the gift of true sight, of warnings and guidance that have saved packs since the first days. I stared at him in confusion. This description bore little resemblance to my occasional prophetic dreams. I wasn't some mystical guide. I was just a half-breed with strange nightmares that sometimes came true. As if sensing my doubt, he turned to me, his voice lowering so that only I could hear. Trust me, Ilara. Trust yourself. Then, to my absolute terror, he raised his voice again. Tonight, as we embrace the moon's gift, I ask you all to witness. Not all strength roars, some whispers. With that enigmatic statement, he released my hand and stepped back, leaving me alone in the center of the circle as the drums resumed their insistent rhythm. All around, wolves began to shift, some slowly, savoring the transformation, others with the rapid fluidity that marked their power and status. I stood frozen, mortified. Did he expect me to try to shift, to fail publicly, in front of his entire pack? But the Alpha King made no such demand. Instead, he shifted himself, a breathtaking transformation that took mere seconds, his human form flowing seamlessly into that of an enormous black wolf with those same amber eyes. Larger than any werewolf I had ever seen, he padded toward me, regal and intimidating. Instinctively, I reached for my pendant, clutching it like a lifeline. As my fingers closed around the carved wood, something strange happened. The sounds of the shifting pack seemed to fade, replaced by a rushing in my ears like wind through ancient trees. The firelight blurred and distorted, and suddenly I wasn't standing in the amphitheater anymore. I was in the forest, but not as I knew it. The trees were older, massive, primordial things with trunks wider than houses. Mist curled around their roots, and moonlight filtered through their canopy with an otherworldly glow. Before me stood wolves, not werewolves in shifted form, but something more elemental. Their eyes held wisdom and knowing beyond anything mortal. At their center was a great white wolf, with eyes the color of sunrise. Mother, I whispered, though I couldn't have explained why the word came to my lips. The white wolf approached, its movements liquid grace. When it was directly before me, it bowed its massive head, touching its forehead to mine. Knowledge flooded me. Images, sounds, sensations too rapid to process fully. Generations of wolves running through untamed forests. The split of the bloodlines. The slow forgetting of the old ways. The rise of alphas who valued only physical dominance. The loss of the other gifts. And through it all, a warning. Shadows gathering. Ancient enemies stirring. A coming storm that would test all packs. A war not just for territory, but for the very survival of their kind. As suddenly as it began, the vision ended. I gasped, staggering backward, and found myself once more in the amphitheater. But something had changed. The pack had fallen silent, all eyes fixed on me with expressions ranging from awe to fear. I realized with a start that I was glowing. A soft blue luminescence emanating from my skin, my pendant burned against my chest, pulsing with the same ethereal light. The Alpha King had resumed his human form and now stood beside me, his expression triumphant and somehow tender. "You see?" he called to the assembly. "The old blood awakens. The dreamwalker walks." The light faded gradually, leaving me shaking and disoriented. What had just happened? Had everyone seen my vision, or only its external manifestations? The Alpha King's hand came to rest at the small of my back, steadying me. "You did well," he murmured. What was that?" I managed to whisper. "Your first true walking," he replied, "and confirmation of what I've suspected since the moment you arrived." Before he could explain further, an elderly wolf approached, a woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen countless moons. She moved slowly but with undeniable authority, and even the Alpha King inclined his head respectfully as she drew near. "It's true then," she said, her gaze fixed on me. "After all these years, the circle begins to close." The Alpha King nodded. "As the prophecy foretold." "Prophecy?" I echoed weakly. The old wolf smiled, reaching out to touch my pendant. "When the lost daughter returns, bearing the mark of the first pack, when the dreamwalker stands between two worlds, when the Alpha King finds his true mate, then the time of awakening begins, true mate." The words hit me like a physical blow, their implication too enormous to comprehend. I looked to the Alpha King, whose expression had softened into something I hadn't seen before, vulnerability, hope, and something deeper that made my heart race. "That's why Silver Creek couldn't take you back," he said quietly. "Not just because you're a dreamwalker, though that alone would be reason enough, but because from the moment you entered my territory, I knew what they never suspected." His fingers brushed my cheek with impossible gentleness. "You are my fated mate, Alara. The one wolf in all the world whose soul calls to mine." Fated mate. The words echoed in my mind as the elderly wolf nodded solemnly and retreated, leaving me alone with the Alpha King before the watchful eyes of the entire pack. My fated mate. The concept was almost mythical. The rarest and most sacred bond between werewolves. A connection that transcended choice, predetermined by forces older than pack laws or territorial disputes. I should have felt overwhelmed, terrified even. Instead, something deep within me resonated with his declaration, as if a truth I had always known was finally being spoken aloud. "Is that why Vincent wanted me back?" I asked quietly. Did he suspect? No. The Alpha King's expression darkened. Silver Creek doesn't believe in fated mates anymore. They've abandoned too many of the old ways. Vincent wanted you back because I wanted you. Nothing more complicated than pride and politics. The ceremony concluded with the Alpha King leading me back to my place, his hand never leaving mine as the pack completed their moon rituals. I felt the weight of stares, some curious, others reverent, a few openly hostile. My status had changed in the space of minutes, elevating me from despised half-breed to a position even pure-blooded alphas might envy. Later that night, the Alpha King, Dominic I learned was his name, escorted me back to the eastern quarters himself. We walked in charged silence, the implications of everything that had happened too vast for casual conversation. At my door, he paused. "Tomorrow," he said, "there will be questions, challenges perhaps. The pack will need time to accept what this means." "And what does it mean?" I dared to ask. "Beyond old legends and prophecies?" His gaze softened in a way that transformed his entire face, making him look younger, almost vulnerable. "It means you will never be alone again, Alara. It means you have found your home, if you choose to accept it. Do I have a choice?" The question wasn't accusatory, merely seeking understanding. "Always." His voice was firm. "The fate bond offers a path, not a prison. I would never force you to walk it unwillingly." With that, He lifted my hand and pressed his lips to my knuckles, a gesture so gentle from a man capable of such violence that it left me breathless. Then he was gone, leaving me with thoughts too tangled for sleep. Morning brought Mira with breakfast and news. "The Alpha King requests your presence in the training grounds," she said, her tone carefully neutral, though I could see the questions burning in her eyes. "Everyone saw what happened last night," I sighed, picking at a piece of bread. "Don't pretend you're not dying to ask." A smile broke through her professional demeanor. "The Alpha King's fated mate, a dreamwalker, returned to Blackstone." She shook her head in wonder. "They'll be telling this story for generations." "If it's true," I countered, still struggling to accept it myself. "It's true," Mira said with certainty. "The light that surrounded you, that's old magic. No one could fake that." She hesitated, then added, "There are those who aren't pleased, of course." "Of course," I echoed. A half-breed outsider suddenly elevated to stand beside their Alpha King? I would have been more surprised if there wasn't resistance. The training grounds occupied a large clearing at the edge of the compound, surrounded by towering pines. Warriors of various ranks practiced combat forms, some in human shape, others partially or fully shifted. The sounds of snarls and bodies hitting dirt filled the air. Dominic stood at the center of it all, bare-chested and gleaming with sweat, demonstrating a fighting technique to a group of younger wolves. He moved with that same fluid grace I had observed before, his strength tempered by precise control. He spotted me immediately, breaking away from the group with a word to his second-in-command. As he approached, I became acutely aware of the training ground falling silent, all eyes turning toward us. "Walk with me," he said, not a command this time, but an invitation. We moved toward a more secluded area near the tree line, where a small stream bubbled over rocks. "You're training them harder than usual," I observed, noting the intensity of the practice sessions behind us. "Vincent's visit wasn't a diplomatic accident," Dominic replied, his voice grave. "Silver Creek is testing boundaries, looking for weaknesses." "Because of me?" Guilt twisted in my stomach. "No." He turned to face me fully. "This has been brewing for years. Your presence is a catalyst, perhaps, but not the cause." He ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty. "There's something else you should know, something I saw in your vision last night." My breath caught. "You saw it too?" He nodded. "Not as you did, not the full walking, but enough. The warning about enemies gathering, about the coming war." His gaze grew distant. "It confirms reports my scouts have brought. Silver Creek isn't acting alone. They've formed an alliance with 3 other packs along the eastern territories." "An alliance against Blackstone?" I frowned. "Why? Your pack is the strongest in the region." "Precisely why," he said grimly. "They fear what they cannot control, and now, with a dreamwalker among us." He trailed off, his implication clear. My presence had only heightened existing fears. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," he said, his expression softening, "you learn what it means to be who you truly are, both dreamwalker and mate to an Alpha King." Over the next week, my education began in earnest. Each morning, the elderly wolf I had met at the ceremony, Aurora, the pack's healer and keeper of old knowledge, instructed me in the history and abilities of dreamwalkers. We sat in her herb-scented cabin as she explained what my mother had been unable or unwilling to share. "Dreamwalkers don't just predict the future," she told me, brewing tea from roots and leaves I couldn't identify. "They walk between worlds, the physical and the spiritual, the now and what might be. They can reach across distances to touch the minds of those connected to them. They can see threats before they materialize." "Is that why I never could shift properly?" I asked. "Because my abilities went in a different direction?" Aurora nodded. "The energy that most werewolves channel into physical transformation, you channel elsewhere. With training, you might achieve a partial shift, but your true strength lies in walking the dream paths." Afternoons found me with Dominic, learning about pack politics and the responsibilities of leadership. Despite the growing threats beyond our borders, he was patient, explaining bloodlines and alliances, treaties and traditions. Sometimes our hands would brush as he pointed out territories on maps, and the jolt of awareness that passed between us became increasingly difficult to ignore. Evenings brought dreams more vivid than ever before, sometimes prophecies, sometimes simple connections to the pack's collective unconscious. I began to sense the bonds between pack members, the web of loyalty and love, fear and ambition that held them together, and always, brightest among those connections, the golden thread that linked me to Dominic. Unacknowledged, but strengthening day by day, 2 weeks after the moon ceremony, the first direct challenge came. I was crossing the compound after a session with Aurora, when 3 female werewolves blocked my path, all purebloods, all from prominent Blackstone families. "Half-breed," the leader sneered, circling me slowly. "You may have fooled the Alpha King with your light show, but we know what you really are." I held my ground, remembering Dominic's advice, never show fear to a dominant wolf. They respect only strength. "And what am I?" I asked calmly. "An opportunist," she spat. "A Silver Creek spy, perhaps, or just a clever manipulator who found a way to climb above her station." "Careful, Celine," one of her companions warned, glancing nervously around the compound. "If the king hears you, the king is blinded by superstition and the possibility of a mate bond," Celine retorted. "Someone must protect the pack's interests." I felt a surge of anger, not for myself, but for Dominic. These wolves questioned his judgment, his ability to lead. "If you have concerns about your alpha," I said, my voice gaining strength, "the proper way to address them is through formal challenge, not by accosting his guests in the courtyard." Celine's eyes narrowed. "You speak of our ways as if you belong here." "I speak of respect," I countered. "Something you seem to have forgotten." She moved closer, her lips pulling back to reveal elongated canines, the beginning of a shift. "Perhaps you need a reminder of your place." What happened next was instinctive. As she lunged toward me, I reached for my pendant, not out of fear, but determination. The world slowed, colors shifting as I accessed the same energy I had touched during the moon ceremony. I didn't glow this time, but something changed in my eyes. I could feel it, a burning sensation that spread from my core to my vision. Celine froze mid-movement, her expression morphing from aggression to shock. "Your place," I said softly, "is not to question what you don't understand." My voice sounded different, layered, as if others spoke through me. "The storm comes for all wolves, Selene. The pack divided cannot stand against it." Images flashed between us, not just my vision, but hers too. Her childhood in the Blackstone territory, her father dying to defend these lands, her genuine love for the pack, twisted by fear of change and the unknown. I gasped as the connection broke, stumbling backward as normal perception returned. Celine stared at me, her face pale. You were in my head," she whispered. "Not intentionally," I admitted, shaken by the experience. "I'm still learning to control it." Something shifted in her expression. Not quite acceptance, but a reluctant reassessment. Without another word, she turned and walked away, her companions hurrying after her. I didn't realize Dominic had witnessed the exchange until he materialized beside me, his expression unreadable. "That was new," he observed. I nodded, still processing what had happened. Aurora said dreamwalkers could touch minds, but I didn't expect to access memories. He guided me gently toward a stone bench nearby. "Your abilities are manifesting faster than anyone anticipated. The bond between us is accelerating your development." The bond. We rarely spoke of it directly, both hesitant to address the growing tension that simmered whenever we were together. "Is it true what she said?" I asked. "That some think you're blinded by the possibility of a mate bond?" His jaw tightened. "There are always those who resist change, who fear what they don't understand. Like me," I said quietly. His hand found mine, his thumb tracing patterns on my palm that sent shivers up my arm. "Are you afraid, Alara?" I looked up, meeting those extraordinary eyes that had haunted my dreams since the first night. "Not of you," I answered truthfully, "but of all this. What it means, what's expected of me. I've spent my life being nothing, being invisible. Now suddenly I'm central to prophecies and pack politics and possible wars, and to me?" He he added softly. Don't forget that part. My heart stuttered at the naked emotion in his voice. For just a moment, the fearsome Alpha King was gone, replaced by a man looking at a woman The thought remained unfinished as shouts erupted from the direction of the main gate. Dominic was on his feet instantly, his posture shifting from tender to predatory in a heartbeat. Warriors were running toward the commotion, some already partially shifted. Stay here, he ordered. But I was already rising to follow him. If there's danger, I should know, I insisted. What if I can help? He hesitated, then nodded sharply. Stay behind me. We hurried toward the main gate where a crowd had gathered. The warriors parted for Dominic, their faces grim. In the center of the commotion stood a young wolf I didn't recognize, bloodied and barely able to stand. His clothes were torn, and deep gashes marked his arms and torso, wounds that should have been healing already if he were a healthy werewolf. Silver weapons, someone murmured. The cuts won't close properly. Dominic approached the injured wolf, his authority creating immediate silence. Report, he commanded. Ambush, the wolf gasped, swaying on his feet. North Patrol. We were checking the border when they came out of nowhere. At least 30 wolves. Silver Creek markings, but others too. They had silver-tipped arrows, silver blades. The rest of your patrol? Dominic asked, though his expression suggested he already knew the answer. Dead or captured, the young wolf choked out. They let me go. Told me to deliver a message. He took a shuddering breath. They said, return what was sold, or the next attack comes for the heart of Blackstone. All eyes turned to me. Return what was sold. There was no mistaking their meaning. Dominic's face hardened into a mask of cold fury. Get him to the healer, he ordered. And 2 warriors immediately moved to support the injured wolf. Council members, to the war room. Now, as the crowd dispersed with urgent purpose, Dominic turned to me. This changes things, he said, his voice low. They're attacking because of me, I whispered, the weight of guilt crushing my chest. People are dying because... No. His hand caught my arm, his grip firm, but gentle. They're using you as an excuse. This was always their plan, to weaken Blackstone, to challenge our position. You are not responsible for their actions. I wanted to believe him, but the injured wolf's words echoed in my mind. Return what was sold. My presence here was costing lives. I should go with you to the council meeting, I said. This concerns me directly. Dominic studied me for a moment, then nodded. Yes. It's time the council understood exactly what we're facing and what we're protecting. The war room was austere, a circular chamber carved into the mountain itself, with a round stone table at its center. Maps covered the walls, marked with the territories of various packs and notations about strengths, weaknesses, alliances. 10 werewolves were already seated when we entered, all older, all radiating the quiet confidence of experience and rank. Their expressions as I entered ranged from respectful neutrality to barely concealed skepticism. Aurora was among them, her ancient eyes kind as she nodded to me. The situation has escalated, Dominic began without preamble, outlining the patrol ambush and the message delivered. Silver Creek has made their intentions clear. This is not just about territorial disputes anymore. This is about the old prophecies, about the balance of power among all packs. With respect, my king, one council member spoke, a grizzled warrior with scars crisscrossing his arms. Are we certain this connection to the half-breed is worth war? We could negotiate. Her name is Ilara, Dominic cut in, his voice dangerously soft. She is a dream walker and my fated mate. There will be no negotiation about her presence here. The council member bowed his head, chastened but not entirely convinced. What Remus means, another council member said, a woman with streaks of silver in her dark hair, is that we must weigh all options. If Silver Creek and their allies are massing for attack, they are, I interrupted, surprising myself with my boldness. All eyes turned to me. And it's not just Silver Creek. You've seen this? Aurora asked. I nodded, touching my pendant unconsciously. In dreams at first, fragments. But after the moon ceremony, it's become clearer. 4 packs allied against Blackstone, gathering in the northern forests. They fear what the prophecy represents. Which is? Remus prompted, skepticism still evident in his tone. Change, Dominic answered. The return to older ways of leadership. Power balanced by wisdom, strength tempered by vision. He moved to stand beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. For too long, the werewolf packs have been ruled by pure dominance, by who can shift fastest, fight hardest, kill most efficiently. We've lost the balance that the first pack embodied. The prophecy speaks of awakening, Aurora added, her aged voice carrying unexpected authority. Of the return of gifts beyond the physical, healing, dreaming, sensing. Gifts that many modern alphas fear because they cannot control them through force. I could see the council weighing these words, some nodding in understanding, others still uncertain. What do you propose, my king? Asked a younger council member. We cannot simply wait for them to attack. We don't, Dominic replied. We prepare. We strengthen our defenses. And, he glanced at me, we accelerate what they fear most. The awakening of the old blood. The fulfillment of the prophecy. The mate bond, Aurora said softly. If completed, it would strengthen both of you. Amplify the Dreamwalker's abilities. Enhance the king's connection to the old magics. My heartbeat quickened. The mate bond. The final formal acknowledgement of the connection between us. In practical terms, it meant a ceremony, an exchange of marks, and intimate consummation. My cheeks warmed at the thought. Is that what you want? Dominic asked me, ignoring protocol to address me directly before his council. The choice must be yours, freely given. In that moment, I realized that despite everything, the danger, the prophecies, the responsibilities, my heart had already decided. From that first night when his golden eyes had met mine across the great hall, something fundamental had shifted in my soul. Yes, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I choose this. I choose you. Relief and something deeper flickered across his face. He turned back to the council. Prepare the ritual for tomorrow night. In the meantime, double the patrols. Bring the outlying families into the central compound. We must be ready for whatever comes. As the council dispersed, Dominic led me back through the compound toward my quarters, his hand never leaving the small of my back. The news of the attack had spread, and I could feel the tension in the air, the heightened alertness of warriors moving with renewed purpose. Are you certain about this? He asked when we were alone. Once done, the mate bond cannot be broken, not even by death. I studied his face, the strong lines, the barely contained power, but also the unexpected gentleness I had discovered beneath his fierce exterior. I've never been more certain of anything, I answered truthfully. But what about you? You're an alpha king. You could have chosen any pure-blooded female, someone who would bring political advantages, military alliances. He silenced me with a touch, his fingers brushing my cheek. I chose nothing. Fate chose for us both. His expression softened. But if I had been given the choice of any wolf in all the territories, I would still have chosen the brave, stubborn half-breed who stood in my great hall with defiance in her eyes, and no idea of her own worth. That night, I dreamed of the white wolf again, the one I had somehow known to call Mother. We stood in that ancient forest of massive trees and swirling mist, but this time, other wolves joined us, the first pack in all their primordial glory. The circle closes, the white wolf spoke in my mind. What was broken begins to heal. They're coming for us, I said. 4 packs allied against Blackstone. Yes, came the response. The old ways are never welcomed easily. Change frightens those who cling to power. I don't know if I'm strong enough, I admitted. I'm only beginning to understand what I am. The white wolf's gaze was both gentle and fierce. You are enough, daughter. You always have been. The mate bond will awaken what has slumbered, but the strength was always within you. I awoke with the first light of dawn, the dream still vivid in my mind. My hand went automatically to my pendant, which pulsed with warmth against my skin. Something was different this morning. I could feel it in the air, in the quality of light filtering through my window, in the heightened awareness of my senses. Mira arrived with breakfast and news. Scouts report movement in the northern forests, she said, her expression grave. Large groups of wolves, moving under cover of darkness. How long do we have? I asked. 2 days, perhaps 3. She laid out clothing far finer than my usual attire, a dress of deep blue fabric that shimmered slightly in the light. The mate ceremony is set for sunset. The entire pack will witness. The day passed in a blur of preparation and briefings. The compound had transformed into a fortress preparing for siege. Warriors training with increased intensity, families stockpiling supplies, healers preparing remedies for silver wounds. Yet alongside the war preparations, there was also a current of excitement, of anticipation for the mate ceremony that would bind their alpha king to his fated pair. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Aurora came to help me prepare. She braided small white flowers into my blonde hair and painted ancient symbols on my wrists and collarbone with a mixture that smelled of earth and herbs. These markings will help channel the energies during the ceremony, she explained. The mate bond between an alpha king and a dreamwalker hasn't occurred in 7 generations. The power it releases will be significant. Will it hurt? I asked, watching her work. Not pain, she replied carefully. Intensity, yes, a reshaping of what you are, what you both are. But not pain in the way you mean. The ceremony took place in the same amphitheater where the moon ritual had been held. The entire pack gathered, their faces solemn yet expectant. Torches illuminated the stone steps leading down to the central fire pit, which blazed higher than usual, flames leaping toward the darkening sky. Dominic waited at the center, dressed in ceremonial attire that emphasized his powerful frame. When our eyes met across the distance, everything else seemed to fade away. The watching pack, the threat of war, even my own lingering doubts. In that moment, there was only him and the golden thread of connection pulling me forward. Aurora led me down the steps toward the fire. With each step, I felt a strange energy building, humming beneath my skin like electricity before a storm. My pendant grew warmer against my chest, pulsing in time with my heartbeat. When I reached Dominic, he took my hands in his, and the contact sent a shockwave through my system. Around us, the pack began a low, rhythmic chanting, in an ancient language I somehow understood, despite never having heard it before. Under stars and moon, before the eyes of ancestors and pack, Dominic began, his voice carrying to every corner of the amphitheater. I claim this wolf as mine, bound by fate, sealed by choice, united in purpose and heart. Under stars and moon, I echoed, the words coming instinctively. Before the eyes of ancestors and pack, I claim this wolf as mine, bound by fate, sealed by choice, united in purpose and heart. Aurora stepped forward, carrying a ceremonial blade. With practiced movements, she made small incisions on our palms, then pressed our bleeding hands together. Blood to blood, she intoned. Heart to heart, soul to soul. What fate has joined, let no power sunder. The moment our blood mingled, the world exploded into light. The fire roared upward, and that blue luminescence I had experienced during the moon ceremony returned 100-fold, enveloping both of us in its glow. Dominic's eyes blazed golden, the vertical pupils expanding until his gaze was more wolf than human. I felt him everywhere, not just his physical presence before me, but inside my mind, my heart, my very being. His thoughts flowed into mine, his memories becoming accessible as if they were my own. I saw his childhood, his rise to power, his lonely years as Alpha King, respected but never truly known, and he saw me, the rejection and isolation I had endured, but also the quiet strength that had sustained me, the dreams that had guided me. When he spoke next, his lips didn't move. His voice resonated directly in my mind. Mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to stand beside, not behind. I answered in kind, the mental connection as natural as breathing. Yours as you are mine, equal in different strengths, together in all things. The blue light contracted suddenly, condensing into a visible thread that wound around our joined hands, sinking into our skin with a flash of heat. When it faded, matching marks remained on our wrists, intricate patterns that resembled the symbols on my pendant. The bond is sealed, Aurora proclaimed. What was prophesied is fulfilled. The Alpha King and the Dreamwalker stand as one. The pack erupted in howls of celebration, the sound echoing off the mountainsides. But even as they celebrated, a different sound reached my enhanced senses. distant but unmistakable, the movement of many wolves through forest underbrush, the whisper of weapons being drawn. Dominic heard it too, his head turning sharply toward the northern perimeter. Through our new bond, I felt his thoughts shift from ceremonial solemnity to battle-ready alertness. They come sooner than expected, his voice whispered in my mind. Then we face them together, I answered, squeezing his hand. As was always meant to be, as the pack mobilized around us, preparing for the coming conflict, I felt no fear. Whatever awaited us, war, peace, or some hard-won middle ground, we would face it united. I had been sold to the rival pack, not knowing I was the Alpha King's fated mate, but in finding him, I had also found myself, not a half-breed failure, but a dreamwalker awakened, not property to be traded, but a queen chosen by fate itself. The storm was coming, but for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged.